G'day. So do you need to trim just a little bit off the bottom of your door? Whether it's rubbing on the carpet or what we're doing, we're installing a weather strip. There's a way of doing it where the circular saw won't rip chunks off the bottom of your door, all that splintering of timber that goes on. We're going to need a couple of bits of paneling. Whether you use plywood or MDF, it doesn't matter. I think this is a third of a sheet of MDF. It's 6mm thick. It cost me $10. I just wanted to make sure that it was the full width of the door. It's got a factory edge on it, dead straight, which is what we're going to use for a guide. MDF or custom wood, particle. Here's the reasoning why we need to make a jig when cutting doors. So look at these arrows. That means the blade is going to be turning this way. When it's cutting, the last bit of its cut is actually lifting up, which means if this were a door, it would be tearing at the grains coming up. This jig is going to be sort of sandwiched against the door like this, stopping the grain from getting lifted. The first piece that we're cutting is going to be this top piece. This is the guide, is using this factory edge here. We've made it 170mm, and that's so as we run the saw along, we can clamp our work to the workbench and it's not going to get in the way of the motor of the saw. The second piece, and this edge here doesn't matter, as long as it's from the guide past where the blade is. We've made ours 280mm. Clean off the dust. I've just glued these two pieces together using a cheap wood glue. It's nothing fancy. We've let this glue overnight, so it's been more than 12 hours. Now we're going to use the power saw, run it along that guide and cut off this excess piece. On this old shelf, I want to cut these screw holes off, which means I'm going to need to trim about 20mm off. The cool thing about using this saw guide is wherever you put your marks, you actually put your saw guide on those marks, and that's exactly where the blade's going to cut. So we'll clamp this down into place. Just finish that off with some sandpaper. So I'm just using a sanding block with some 240 grit sandpaper. And that's come up perfect. Have a look at this. That's a pretty good cut. Now that we've got that exposed raw edge, especially if it's the bottom of a door that you've trimmed off, we're going to want to get some paint on there and seal it. Otherwise it'll get moisture and start to rot. One other thing I reckon you do with your saw guide is drill a hole in one end so that you can hang it up in your shed and it stays nice and flat, ready to use for next time. If you like this video and you found it helpful, give it a thumbs up. I appreciate that, and I'll see you on the next video.